Hi everyone, it's Christine from the Door Doctor, and we're going to make a Christmas wreath today, a little different from ones that I've made before. And we're going to be actually making this together for the first time. So I've never done this exact design, so there may be a couple of hiccups along the way, but we'll work through them together. This is going to be a play on a triple flower wreath. You've probably seen those online where there's 3 daisies sort of clustered on the wreath together, and so this will be a Christmas themed version of that. What'll also make this a little bit different is I'm going to be using a wreath board for today's tutorial. Usually I use wire wreath frames for all of my wreaths, but we're going to use this 16-inch round, unique in the creek wreath board to apply our flowers. We'll essentially make the flowers first, apply them to the board, and then finish our wreath. All right, so part one today will be all about supplies. You can see I have a lot of supplies on my desk right here. Part two will make each of the individual flowers, including the flower center. And then part three will be applying them to the wreath board, which might be a little tricky. And then sort of the little finishing touches, for your wreath. All right, so supplies, part one. So we're going to make this from poly burlap mesh. As I mentioned before, there will be 3 miniature flowers that you're making. I already made my first one. So this is a red and white striped poly burlap mesh. I buy all of my poly burlap mesh from craftoutlet.com. So that's where this one came from. So you'll need, for this flower, if you want to exactly duplicate this, you'll need 8 10 by 10 inch squares cut of this poly burlap mesh. I also have a white solid poly burlap mesh, another 8 squares of that. And then we'll do a solid red flower, another 8 squares of that. And then for the leaves, I planned 6 leaves. Probably that might go up. It depends on how the arrangement looks, but I've already cut 3 10 by 10 inch squares of emerald green poly burlap mesh. All right, move this out of the way. As I mentioned, we have our 16-inch unique in the creek wreath board. This one I think I purchased at Amazon. I already pre-cut a felt circle to go in the back of the wreath for finishing. The wreath centers I'm going to make out of these plastic Christmas ornaments. These are all purchased through Dollar Tree. I don't know if you ever see in Dollar Tree, every holiday season they have those tubes. These are 1.5 inch in diameter Christmas ornaments. So you're going to need 6 for each wreath. Whatever colors or finishes you like. I'm going to stick those off to the side. As usual, I have a lot of 8-inch zip ties, and this will be used to apply petals to the wreath backing and also to fashion each of the petals. I have a combination of white and red, but certainly you could just get the white clear ones, and that's fine. And then I have a pipe cleaner for hanging the back of your wreath. You'll need some floral wire so that you can wire some of these ornaments together. And then I usually have number 5 plastic mesh circles that I cut for each individual flower. So you're going to need 3 of these. And the diameter of this, let's see, that's about 4 inches in diameter. And usually I just use, you might laugh at this, but usually I just take the lid off my Mod Podge container and trace it on the mesh and cut them into circles. Okay, so 3 of these for each of the flowers. All right, so that was a lot. So I'm going to clear all of this off, and then the next part, we'll just work on making the petals for each of our flowers. So clear everything and just have your zip ties and your pre-cut poly burlap mesh squares. All right, so welcome back. We're going to start by making some of the petals for each of these individual flowers. Let me see if I can find my initial flower here. So as you can see, there are 8 petals. They're folded petal, pretty easy to make. I've done this one before. And you're going to apply them to the mesh. I don't know why I always do this sort of offset, but you can certainly apply them in the middle of your circle, but I'll give you a sense of where the placement's going to be. So 8 total petals for each of your 3 flowers. And so we're going to make a couple of the petals together using the red poly burlap mesh. I'm going to use red zip ties just because I happen to have them, but you don't have to do that. All right, so here's your 10 by 10 inch cut square. I like to keep it so that the curve is facing the ceiling, cut edges are on the side, the seamed edge is facing you. And you're just going to start by making a large triangle. Okay, fold that into a nice triangle and have the folded edge facing you. Then you're going to take the lower left-hand corner of the triangle, which is here for me. You're going to bring it up, not to meet the peak of the triangle, but to just extend a little bit past it. And then you're going to crease that. I'll show you how that looks. Okay? Then you're going to carefully hold on to the whole thing, flip it over. And now you're going to repeat what you just did on the other side. So this corner here, you're going to fold it up to just extend past the peak of the triangle and then fold it. It always reminds me of an envelope, sort of a diamond-shaped envelope at that. And then you're just going to, usually I just spend a little time shaping it a little bit so it's a little pointy at the top. And then you want to twist it counterclockwise. You have all of these loose ends down here. You're going to gather across the bottom portion of this folded square or diamond. And usually I just pinch it twice in between my fingers and then we'll zip tie it. All right, and that's going to be your petal. Cut the zip tie, and then I usually like these 3-in-1 cutting tools to cut any of the extra mesh. I'll have a link for that cutting tool in the description box. Okay, let's do another one together. So cut edges up the side, curve facing up, fold your large triangle, place it so that the folded edge is facing you. Take the lower left corner of the triangle, extend it or fold it so that it extends beyond the peak of the triangle. Flip everything over and then repeat. Turn it, shape it a little bit, and then gather it across the bottom unfinished edge. And then zip tie it. I usually end up having like 2 or 3 inches of extra mesh on the bottom there. A little bit of a tail. All right, again, fold your triangle. Turn it, take your left lower corner, fold it up. I tend to stick my thumb under here unconsciously to sort of hold that little pocket, if you will. Flip it over, hold that down, make your next fold, turn it to the side, shape it a little bit, gather it across the base. We're going to do all of the petals the same way. So each flower, 8 petals, whatever colors you choose. Okay, let's do one more together. All right, fold your large triangle. And so in total, you'll need 24 squares of mesh for the petals. I chose red, white, and that striped mesh, but certainly there's tons of, you could use fabric mesh, whatever you want. All right, so there she is. So I think I'm going to continue on and finish the others. So I already have 1 flower done, so I need to finish 16 petals. Another 12 need to be done. So I'll do that separate, and then when we come back, have your little square piece of plastic mesh. We'll apply petals to at least one of these circles so you can get a sense of how each flower should look. Okay, I'll be right back. Welcome back. I have all my petals made, and now we're going to assemble one of the 3 flowers together. As I mentioned before, I simply use number 5 plastic mesh, which if you follow some of my other tutorials, I usually apply this to the center of a wire wreath frame. So I use any of the little extra leftover pieces and cut them into these approximately 4-inch round circles so I can apply the petals to them first. Okay, so that you can see that they're a little uneven, they're not perfectly cut. I think you can purchase pre-cut circles at craft stores, but I just prefer to use the mesh that I already have. All right, so we're going to do the red flower together. I already have a zip tie placed on my mesh circle rather. It doesn't have to be precisely in the center, just as long as you have, usually I place the opposite zip tie about 8 or 9 squares away. So you want to make sure at least that you have that much space. So, 8 blank squares would put my other petal right there. Okay, so let's just place petal number 1. Oops, actually, I'm gonna come over here, place petal number 1, and we'll first place 4 petals in a quadrant, so break into quadrants so that they're nice and even. Better stated, I usually like to place petals sort of like the hands of a clock. So I'll do 12 o'clock, I'll place one at 6, then I'll do 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock so that they're nice and evenly spaced, and then I'll fill in the other remaining 4 petals. So there's my 12 o'clock or my north. Usually, let's see, I have 8 blank squares in between this petal and the next one. So I just counted 8 empty squares directly across from the first petal, and this will be my 6 o'clock or my south. I'll show you this again once I'm done. And then we'll do 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock, or east-west. And I'm moving fast just because I've done these so many times. I can cut, I can count these little mesh squares practically with my eyes closed. All right, oops. Let's get the last one in there. So there are your first 4 petals, and now you're going to place your next 4, the final 4, in the spaces in between. All right. I'm using red zip ties just so I don't see the zip ties on the finished product. I do realize it makes it a little harder to see exactly where I'm placing the petals. But I'll move things closer in a minute. So just fill in those spaces. And the little 8 squares of mesh is something that I arrived at because it allows you to pull these petals as close as you can to the center. You want them as close to the center as possible so that when your flower center goes on top, you can't see so many of the zip ties. All right, so let's see. All right, and now I'm just going to tuck each of these underneath, the ones that I added. Oops. Let's see if I did that right. There. So it looks like a little spiral pattern there. Okay. So that's flower number 2. I'm going to hold it up so that you can see there should be 8 blank squares in between each of these zip ties. And so 8 petals total. All right. So that's flower number 2. This was flower number 1. I'm going to make my white flower separate, and you do the same. And then when we come back, we'll have our 3 flowers. I would tell you to heat up your glue gun because we'll do the flower centers next. Welcome back. So we have our 3 flowers all set and ready to go, but now we need to make a nice flower center to highlight these pretty petals. And so we're going to use these plastic ornaments. I'm going to show you how to wire each one of them, how to make them into almost like a little cluster, like a little bouquet of ornaments, and apply them to each of your flower. These come in a range of finishes. I've been a little bit indecisive about which color and what finish I wanted to use in this particular wreath. I've gone back and forth, but I think I'm going to use, I always like gold with red, so I'm going to do gold on the red. I always like red on the white, so we're going to do that in a shiny finish for those 2. And then I don't know, I was thinking green shiny in the center here versus the gold matte. I haven't decided yet, but either way, I have tons of these ornaments to be able to make the decision later. Okay, So let me see, we'll just do one of these together. I think I'll choose the gold shiny bulbs here. Move my flower out of the way. You're going to want some floral wire. I have a set of wire cutters to help me with that. And then my glue gun is heating up off to the side. All right, what's nice about these plastic ornaments is, number one, they're cheap, but number two, you can pull them apart pretty easily so that you can wire them. And so for each of these, if you see, they have a little, almost like a little crown on the top of them. That's pretty easy to pull off. And so I would say pull each of those off. Some are easier than others. You're going to want to have 6 of these ornaments for each of the flowers. This one I already wired, so I'm going to leave that one alone off to the side. And you're going to want to cut floral wire. I don't usually measure this, so probably I cut about, I don't know, 10 inches of the floral wire for each one. Again, I just usually very quickly do this. You just want to make sure you have enough to thread into the center of the ornament and then through to the back of your wreath. And so it's not, doesn't have to be that long. I probably cut more than is necessary. So it's 3. Let's do 4. And there's 5. All right, so let's move that out of the way. So you have these 5 pieces of floral wire, and usually what I like to do is I'll sort of crimp, bend, make a little hook, if you will, at the end of one, maybe about 1 inch long. And that way I'll thread the little folded portion of the wire into the Christmas ornament. It's almost like using a wall anchor when you decorate your house. That one's not going, so I'm going to take a different one here. It's like when you apply a wall anchor when you're hanging something. Okay, once it's in there, you pull back and it doesn't want to come out. All right, so you're going to put that in there, and then you're going to thread the floral wire through the little top of your ornament. And then I usually like to use the glue gun to apply a little bit of glue. It'd help if I had a glue stick in here. A little bit of glue into the tip here. Not too much, but just a little blob of glue there. And then carefully slide and clip the top of your ornament back on. You're gonna have to let that dry for a second. You're gonna see there's a lot of glue coming up the tip of mine, which isn't a huge deal, okay? And so you'll do that for all 6 ornaments. Let's see, one of these didn't want to let me thread it, so I'm not sure why. We'll have to figure that out once we get to it. A little bit of glue, slide the top on. I usually pull the wire out a little bit, get rid of some of these glue strands, let that dry. Fold your wire again, thread it into the bulb, put the little top back on. A little bit of glue, pop that back on. 2 more. Let's see, was this the one that gave me a hard time? Nope. I always purchase these at Dollar Tree, and one year I purchased them online. And if you purchase them online, you have to purchase a case of the sleeves and they send you an assortment of colors. And so, oh my goodness, I had hundreds and hundreds of ornaments. But it took me a while to work through them, I have to say. Last a long time. So this is the ornament that didn't want me to quite put that wire in, but I managed to force it in there. Oops, and here we go. Forced it in there, but it came right back out. Here, there we go. always really bad with my glue gun here. I usually burn my fingers, but today was success. All right, so you have 6 bulbs all wired. And then what I usually like to do, I'll cluster them together. Obviously they're still drying, so I'm not going to be super harsh with pulling them around. I usually like to have one in the center. It's sort of a star configuration or pentagon with one ornament sitting slightly up and in the middle. Okay, looks like a little bouquet of flowers. And then what works for me is taking a zip tie. You know I love my zip ties. And zip tying right sort of at the base of that bouquet and tightening that. And what I like about it is I know it's not going to come apart, and then I still have some freedom to move the ornaments up and down a little bit. I used to twist them. I used to twist the wire, and it just got really messy. Okay, so now you have your little bouquet of ornaments. And now to thread it into your flower, usually I'll separate these. I have three legs, if you will, here. I sort of twist them a little bit. And 3 here. Sort of the stalk stem of your bouquet. And then we'll pull our flower back in. If these are too long and unwieldy, you can certainly trim the wire to make it shorter. I'm just going to try to soldier ahead with them pretty long like this. And you're going to simply, I say simply, find a nice little square in the mesh to float each one through. There's one. And here's the second side. All right, pull them through here, and then you're going to twist them on the back. But first I like to make sure that they're more or less centered. The trick with this, with using these for this particular wreath, is that you might see the zip ties. I hate seeing zip ties on wreaths, but you might see a lot of the zip ties unless you really snug these ornaments pretty tight. Because this is such a flat flower, and so you can kind of see all the cut edges of your petals under there. So that doesn't make me super happy, but I think the effect of this wreath is pretty enough that you can excuse that. And I don't know how many people are going to be that close checking out your wreath for any imperfections. So I'm going to really tighten these quite a bit, twist them on the back, flip it around. You can kind of arrange them a little bit because the wire allows you to manipulate them somewhat. I'm going to grab my wire cutters, cut these edges, and we're just going to tuck those into the mesh square so that they're out of the way. All right. Tuck this guy in. All right. So there's the back, and here's your front. I think that's very pretty. And so I'm going to repeat this with my next 2 flowers, and you do the same. And then when we come back, we'll pull out our wreathing board and apply each of these flowers. We'll arrange them how we like them and apply some of the leaves. All right, so I've finished all 3 flowers, all 3 flower centers. I decided I'd land on the Kelly Green shiny flower center for that striped flower. And now we're going to apply them to our wreath base. These are just loosely placed here because I was trying to get a sense of how far out from the center of the wreath I should place them, because I'm hoping not to see too much of the wreath board behind it, but I think you're going to see some of it regardless. And so in the spaces here on the edges, we're going to place our green leaves, and I was also taking a little time to figure out how many leaves I wanted and where I wanted them placed. Okay, so this is going to be the rough configuration of our flowers. Let me move those off to the side so we can look at our wreath board and decide strategy here. So this is a 16-inch wreath board. I don't use them a lot for flower wreaths. I think they're nice because obviously they have all these pre-punched holes, and so everything is nice and even. But personally, I like wire wreath frames because it allows me to really pack in petals as tightly as I want, move things around a little bit on the fly. So I don't use this quite so often, but it is very sturdy flower base, and so this will be nice to attach these individually for this wreath. I went ahead and I just sort of marked with a little red Sharpie a couple places that I thought each of these 3 flowers you know, would look good. And there's roughly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 to 5 pairs of holes in between each of the markings that I made. And in between those markings, I think is where I'm going to place some of my leaves. And so we'll do that together. I'm going to do 3 leaves in each section instead of the 2 I originally thought I would make. And so right now what I'm going to do is I'll place some zip ties for a section of 3, and then we'll make the leaves together. And then once the leaves are done, we'll place the flowers on top and attach those. All right. All right, so there's 3 zip ties. This is going to be a pretty simple petal / leaf. So you're going to take your square. Let me move my board out of the way. You're going to take your square, cut edges up the side as usual, rounded part of the square facing the ceiling, and you're just going to turn it so that it's almost like a diamond shape. And then I like to take the point that's closest to me, and you're just going to roll it until you're about midway. And then you're going to take the other point, opposite point, and kind of loosely roll that until it meets the first little roll. It doesn't have to be super tight. Actually, let that go. So let me do it again here. And then pinch it in the middle there. Okay. And then I just usually fold it right in the middle so that it has almost this little tapered, rounded, almost looks like an ice cream cone in the middle. And then you're going to apply this to your zip tie. Let's bring this guy back in. We'll start with this one, place it right on top. And zip tie that. That's number 1. We'll do 3 of these together. All right, diamond shape. Nice easy roll towards the middle. Roll the other one to meet it. Pinch it in the middle. Fold it in the middle. Stick it right on top of your zip tie. And number 3. So again, I think I'll do 3 in each of the spaces in between each of the 3 flowers. We'll probably have to maneuver the flowers a little bit to cover as much of the wreath board as we can, but do our best. All right, so there's the first three leaves. I'll do the other 3. So this section has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 holes. I'll probably place them right here in the middle, and then there'll be another 3 up top there. Break this board into thirds, and then we'll come back once we've done 9 petals or 9 leaves and add the flowers on top. Okay, so we're getting close to being done. I've had all my leaves placed, all 9 of them, and it's looking cute. I think you could even place more leaves if you preferred it to go all the way around, but I'm going to leave it the way it is for right now. And right now these flowers are just gently placed, so I could see in the reflection on my camera here how they looked, all spaced out. I think that's all right. And so now we're going to try to zip tie these into place. So I'm going to move 2 of them out of the way. I'm going to leave the red guy right here, move it towards me. And if I lift it up, I have a little marking here of where I wanted it. And we're going to try our best to zip tie it. So I'm going to flip it around and actually go in from the back. So I'm going to put a zip tie, and you could actually go in between these 2 sets of holes. I'm not sure which I prefer. I think I'm going to do that actually. So I'm going to go in this hole and come out that one. I'm going to thread my zip tie through from the back to the front, grab a piece of the plastic mesh of the flower, okay, come around, come back down, try to show that a little closer, oops, and then thread it through here and hold it in place. Now, if you're selling these, you probably want to have a second zip tie for that same flower a little closer to the middle so it's not flapping in the breeze, but for now we're just going to use the one. Okay, just for demonstration purposes. I'll probably go back and add an extra one there, but for now we'll flip it over. Well, it's actually pretty solid, honestly. And that's where the first flowers ended up. It covers the edge of the board. For the most part, it covers a good part of the center, maybe a little bit too much of the center of this board. And now let's do this striped one. So we're going to place that. Here I made my little red marks. I think I'll just stay in these two zip ties. I'm going to flip this over gently. Go in this way. Flip it over again. Take my flower. Find a good spot. And I'll show you this in a minute. It's just hard to thread the zip tie and see what I'm doing at the same time. The camera, all right. Let's see. And so I threaded from the back of the wreath board through that hole and then up through the mesh, back down through the mesh. And I'm going to go back through the back of the wreath board and secure that. All right. You could do pipe cleaners here too, but I like the zip ties. Just really going to hold it in place. And I think I want some of the red flower on top of this. So I think I'm going to play around with it a little bit like that. Let's see. Maybe that. There we go. And then finally, we'll have our white flower. Should probably move it a little further to the outside. So it's not quite so crowded in the middle, but let's see. I'm going to place our zip tie. I think I'm going to go in between again. So up through the back of this hole and then down through that one. I will say the bulbs on this flower, I need to tighten those. They're not quite cooperating with my wiring technique, but that's okay. So let me flip this over. Oops. And zip tie this guy as tight as I can. I think I twisted that zip tie. That's gonna have to do. Whew, all right. And one thing I'll say is that they're quite close to one another. So I might go back and actually thread it so that I move each flower outside a little bit more. And actually, I think I might do that with this white one. I told you this would be a work in progress. I'm going to cut this zip tie and start again. See if I can make this a little bit better. I think I want it actually a little further outside. You're going to have a little bit of the mesh hanging out, but I think that's okay. You don't want to crowd the front. Let's see. It's a do-over. We'll see if that makes a difference. I'm going to take a look before I tighten the zip tie. Yeah, I think it does. If I put it just like that, we'll have to rearrange those bulbs. Goodness. All right. And there we go. We're going to twist her a little bit, rearrange the bulbs a little bit. and see if we can cover up all of our little bits and pieces of wreath board. You could do this on a wire frame too, okay? But there we are so far. It's hard to get all of it in the screen, but I think she looks pretty so far. Now to finish the wreath, you want a hanging loop on the back. So I'm going to carefully flip it again. I think I'll place it so that the red, let's see, just going to do this at random here. I think maybe so that the red is sort of towards the top. That's personal preference. I'm going to flip it over. You could place this anywhere. And what I would do is I'm going to take this pipe cleaner, fold it in half. Okay. And then, you know, you can sometimes go from the back or go from the front. I think I'm going to go from the front of the wreath, come out the back with the loop. Okay. Bend it upwards. Here, I'm going to turn this. So you went loop from front to back. Make sure it's long enough that you have enough up here that you like it. Take these little legs that are in the front of the wreath board, and I would wrap one around the back of the loop that way and one around the back of the loop this way, okay? And twist tie them and then pull. Hard to show this on its side. Such a big wreath. And then if you want, you could even thread it back through the front so that you can hide those little legs, okay? And you have your little loop up here. And then grab your felt circle. So for the felt circle covering for this particular type of wreath board, you could glue this. I've had people ask me if you could glue it, and certainly that's totally fine. But I think when you glue it, it runs the risk, especially if you're selling these, of coming off. And so I like to, you know, zip tie these in place as well. I have a little hole punch. You can just go around the edges here. There are these outer holes that we haven't used. You could try to line these up. I don't think you need as many zip ties as you see holes here, but you could probably go every other one, poke a little hole in your wreath or in your felt, and snake your zip tie up and attach it. So I think I'll do a bunch of those here. Let's see, I'll go to the opposite side. Line up my hole punch. I'm going to use my red zip ties. And you're going to thread your zip tie from the front of the wreath frame to the back and then up through the felt. Okay. And I think for today's purpose, we'll just do a couple. So you're getting sort of long on time. Do one there. And maybe we'll just do one more over here just to finish. All right, just to keep that in place. And you could tuck all these in a little bit. Probably not as easy to tuck them in as with a wire frame, but just to hide the little ends of the zip tie. And let's flip her around again. Rearrange some of these leaves and petals. If you want to take up more space, you can, you know, certainly stretch out some of those leaves a little bit more. And like I said, rearrange all your little flower centers. And there she is. Well, that's a different one. So I'm glad that you came along and helped me with this. Hopefully you enjoyed this tutorial. You can make it your own. There's a lot of variations you can try with the different colors here. And if you enjoyed that tutorial, hit subscribe for many more. Have a good day.